All right, it's Wednesday, November 21st. We just finished out a fairly short cash game session here at Casino M8trix. We're going to find a little spot to recap a few hands. All right, before we jump into the few hands here, just want to touch on a few things since it's our first visit to Casino M8trix here. This is definitely a property that I really enjoy coming to. Definitely the second favorite after Lucky Chances, and I only put Lucky Chances over that just because of a shorter commute coming from San Francisco. It used to be known as Garden City Casino, as it's kind of like a predecessor type property. And I used to venture that property very often, as I mentioned, I believe in vlog 3 when I touched on playing throughout college and that sort of thing. And we spent a lot of hours at Garden City Casino and did fairly well over a few year span. The main reason I do love this property a lot is because of that Vegas-like feel. As I touched on, Bay 101 has a similar feel, but Casino M8trix was kind of the first in the area to do this kind of an upgrade, and so they've definitely got a leg up in my opinion. All right, so first interesting hand comes, make a fairly loose play here. We're under the gun with Deuce 3 of hearts, and we go ahead and make it $20 to go. The under the gun plus one player makes the call, and a few other players make the call as well. I believe it's a middle position, cutoff, and big blind. So we go 5 ways to a flop of 4 diamonds, 6 of hearts, 10 of hearts. So we flop a gut shot straight draw and a flush draw here. It checks to us, and we go ahead and continue. We bet $50, and only the under the gun plus one player calls. So we go heads up to a turn, which brings a queen of clubs. This time, I go ahead and continue the story of having, potentially, pair, an overpair. Plus, we've got a ton of equity with our hands, so we just go ahead and continue. We make it $110 to go, and the under the gun plus one player makes the call as well. The river brings a deuce of clubs, so we make bottom pair on this board, and I go ahead and just check it. I think at this point, it's not a lot of showdown value, but now that we've made a pair, I've been putting this player on a similar type drawing hand throughout, especially when he doesn't raise us on the turn, that he may have a flush draw and a straight draw as well. So we go ahead and check it, and he bets $235. Pretty interesting spot because I'm not exactly sure what he's representing. I don't know if he has like a 10 in his hand that he would bet the river here. I feel like he'd just check it. And if he had a queen on the turn, he would have to have some sort of straight draw, flush draw type queen for him to continue on the flop. And so I feel like we would have heard from him on the turn too if he had a queen. So after thinking it through, I ended up putting him on a range of something along the lines of 7-9 of hearts, 7-8 of hearts. So with that in mind, we go ahead and make a tank call. And he goes ahead and says, great call. He ends up turning over 5-7 of hearts. Pretty amazed with how we made that call, and I think it's definitely a spot where I think he's a very capable player, and so that's part of the reason we make the call here. Pretty courageous call, I guess you can say, but putting the pieces of the puzzle together there, I feel pretty good about our play, and so we take that one down. All right, so next interesting hand here, the under the gun player limps. We go with pocket sixes, and we open it to $25. The cutoff makes the call, and the limper makes the call. So we go 3 ways to a flop of 4 clubs, 6 of diamonds, 10 of hearts. The limper just leads for $65. Seeing as we have middle sets here on a fairly dry board, I don't think there's too much reason to raise here. So we just go ahead and call, and the cutoff makes the call as well. So we got 3 ways to a turn card of a queen of clubs. So this brings in some backdoor straight and flush draws. He goes ahead again and leads for $175. He's got about another $700 behind, and I think this is where we're going to want to put in a raise with some of those draws coming through. So we go ahead and raise it to $500. We do cover this player by a couple hundred, and the cutoff makes the fold, and the limper tanks for a bit, and he ends up folding as well. So I'm guessing he probably had an ace-10 or that type of hand where it's just very difficult for him to continue when the queen comes. I was hoping he may have turned some equity potentially, but I still like our raise there just because the board was starting to get draw heavy, and I don't want us to kind of essentially get us in a weird spot by just check calling or just calling the turn there. So fairly standard raise, I think, in my opinion. I think occasionally you can definitely just flat there, but given that there was a player behind, I didn't want to price that particular player in if for whatever reason he had a draw. So we take that pot down as well. So we started our session at about 3:30 in the afternoon here. It's just a bit past 7 o'clock. We put in some time at their 2-3-5 game, slightly different in that you do have to put a couple dollars on the button. So it's a 3-blind game, I guess you can say. And the buy-in for the 2-5 game here is a little bit smaller than Lucky Chances. Lucky Chances has a $1,000 cap. It has a $600 cap at this particular property. All right, so that caps things off for us here. A fairly short session, like I said, but definitely happy to pay our first visit to Casino M8trix, San Jose, California, for their first time on the vlog. We were in for a total of $800 and we cash out $1,793. So we go ahead and profit $993 over a few hours of play. Feeling pretty good. Definitely a couple days after our tournament score. So it feels like we're maybe starting to hit a little bit of an upswing again. But only time will tell. We'll continue.
It's just like, what the? Yes, but it's just too far for me. Yeah.
All right, it's Friday, November 30th. Just wrapping up a session here at the Oaks Card Club in Emeryville, California. It's our first time visiting this location for the vlog, just like Casino M8trix about a week and a half ago. And yeah, we put in a couple hours at the 2-3-5 game. But before we recap that, I just want to go over a few things since it is our first time here. All right, so first and foremost, a little bit of history on the property. I knew Oaks has been around for a little while, but I had to take a look at their website to kind of see how long they've been in existence. And they started in 1896, so it's been 122 years. Pretty good long run, and it doesn't sound like they're going anywhere, which I think is great. And I think a couple of pros, pretty well-known pros, got their start here at Oaks Card Club, that being Antonio Sfandiari and Phil Locke. I think I saw a documentary a few years back and they talked about kind of getting their start in this area. So it's pretty cool to kind of see, you know, pretty well-known pros kind of get their start in the Bay Area. Another thing that's pretty unique to Oaks is that their cash game tables are actually 10-handed, which I think is okay for the game. I mean, I personally prefer to play, you know, more traditional 9-handed because I think 10-handed can be a little bit much at times. My ideal probably setup would be 7 or 8 players just because I think there's generally more action and more interesting spots when you play in that kind of setup. But that being said, I think Oaks does a good job as far as kind of the little things, meaning that the poker table is actually pretty spacious and it does accommodate 10 players pretty comfortably. So kudos to them for that. But if you do play, just know that it is a true full ring game of 10 players. All right, so one final thing that's fairly unique to this property is that you can actually do a button straddle in the games, at least in the 2-5 game, and which means in this case the small blind actually has to act first before the under the gun player, and I think that makes it kind of unique in that and sometimes not the best way in my opinion, just because the button is already is the most valued position on the table, and by allowing the button to straddle and then making the small blind act first, it actually increases the button's edge, and I think, you know, most people should be playing the button fairly aggressively in general, but because there is a button straddle here, it kind of enhances that. Not just the aggressiveness that should come from that position, but it increases the advantage because now you've already got small blind and big blinds kind of decisions made before it gets to you. So I feel, you know, not the greatest in terms of that perspective, but so yeah, I mean, given that it's part of the game, you kind of just have to roll with it and make adjustments, kind of having that in mind. All right, so as mentioned, I did put in a fairly short session here from 8:30 to about midnight. And before I jump into 2 hands that were pretty interesting, I do want to just give a quick shout out to 2 guys that I met on the table, Ricky and Alan. We had a pretty enjoyable conversation about poker, about vlogging. 2 guys that seem to be crushers in this particular game at this property. And we had a good conversation. good people. The one thing I really enjoyed is just the fact that they both carried themselves pretty well on the table, and I think that's super good for the game to just be respectful towards other people, have a good time. I think sometimes, this game, because it can be volatile at times, you may see the best and worst of people, but I think it's very important to kind of be professional about things, be respectful, and these two guys did a really good job of that. So that's something I definitely appreciate and I think is great for the game. But yeah, let's jump into the first of the two interesting hands. So there's a button straddle actually put on by this particular player, Ricky, and it folds to me in the cutoff, and I've got ace-7 off suit, and I go ahead and make it $40 to go. The button has made this straddle a couple times, and there was one time where I did make a same raise earlier in the session, and he just quickly folded. And so this is, I think, either the second or third time that I've done this. And so I think there's a little bit of a dynamic here that comes into play. So after I make it $40 to go with ace-7 off suit, the button goes ahead and puts in a 3-bet to $125. So typically I'd fold this hand, but as I mentioned, the player is very capable and he definitely knows what he's doing. And so because there is a little bit of a dynamic built from kind of earlier in the session, I just go ahead and make the loose call. And so we go heads up to a flop. All right, so then when the flop comes 8 of clubs, 7 of spades, 5 of diamonds. We flop middle pair here with not too much backdoor equity, but with most of our range, we're probably checking in this spot, and that's what we go ahead and do. The button then goes ahead and makes a continuation bet of $90, so a little bit of a down bet. I expect him to be betting here with his entire range, given that he's in position and a very capable player at that. So we go ahead and make the call with middle pair. And now the turn brings a deuce of spades, which brings in the backdoor flush draw. It doesn't change too much in terms of like the overall board texture other than that. He shouldn't be having too many kind of two pairs with that particular card. But that being said, our hand is essentially the bluff catcher in this spot, so we go ahead and check it again. And this time he puts out a rather large bet of $235. We think it through for a little bit. We've got another $400 behind if we make the call. So his sizing is really good because it kind of sets him up for a river shove regardless of kind of what comes out. He can kind of decide whether he wants to make that move or not. That being said, our hand is fairly strong, and again, this player has a very wide range, and so we go ahead and make the call. And now the river brings an 8 of hearts, which pairs the 8, and it's a really great card for us because the way we played the hand throughout looks like we potentially have an 8 in our hand. And so it can make it somewhat difficult for him to kind of bet into us whether he has a value hand or if he's bluffing, just because he's kind of can't be repping too much at this point other than overpairs. And if he has overpairs, there's a percentage of the time that he has to put me on an 8 here. And so it could be kind of hard for him to kind of go for a value bet. So all things being said, we go ahead and check it. The button tanks for a little bit. And I think he kind of too knows that it's not the greatest card for his particular range. Since it probably hits mine a little bit more often. And so he goes ahead and checks back. We show our ace-7, and he announces good hand. And so we take that one down. All right, so the next and last interesting hand comes when we're playing 7-handed. The under the gun player limps. The low jack makes it $25. The hijack calls, and we're in the cutoff with king-10 of hearts. We make the call as well. The big blind makes the call, and the under the gun limper makes the call. So we go 5 ways to a flop. So the flop comes queen of spades, jack of clubs, 6 of spades. The under the gun just goes ahead and leads for $70. And only we make the call in the cutoff with an open-ended straight draw. The turn then brings a king of diamonds. So now we make a pair to go with our open-ended straight draw. The under the gun player doesn't stop betting. This time he goes ahead and bets $100. He's got about another $400 or $500 behind. Given that we're in position here, I like just calling here just to leave kind of all options at the table for what to do with the river depending on what comes and what he decides to do. So we go ahead and make that call. All right, so the river comes a 5 of clubs, and this time the under the gun player checks it, which is a really good sign for us. I think if he has like 2 pair or better here, he should be betting most of the time. And the fact that kind of his bet sizing was kind of slightly small on the turn, it doesn't lead me to believe that he has that strong of a hand. So seeing that we have top pair here, I think we can get a lot of value from Queen X or Jack X type hands. So we go ahead and make a value bet of $150. We don't want to put the entire stack in there kind of just because we do want to get paid off for our hand. And given that, he only has about 400, like I said, 500 back, I don't want to scare him off. And so we go ahead and make that bet of $150. He doesn't take too long. He makes the call. We turn our hand over, and it is indeed good. So we scoop that pot. It's good to kind of assess kind of throughout how the hand plays out, and the fact that he checks the river in this case was a sign of weakness, and so it was good for us to kind of make that thin value bet on the river. All right, so that wraps up the session for us. We put in a few hours at the table. We were in the game for a total of $600, and we cash out $1,867. So we profit $1,267. Pretty nice win, given that we've not really come to this property too often. I have a lot of friends tell me that it's a lot of fun to play here. There's a decent amount of action to be had, and that definitely was the case tonight. So we're glad that we kind of changed things up for two kind of sessions in a row here, going from Casino M8trix, that was the first time for the vlog, and now Oaks Card Club for the first time on the vlog. And so the plan for the rest of the weekend is to put at least one more session in. I think we want to go to kind of a different property, most likely Lucky Chances, and to see if we can try to, make a trifecta out of this this vlog here.
Go on. You want him to call?
Wow.
I didn't see it was in. No, I don't.
13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 2 hours.
All right, it's Saturday, December 1st. All right, I actually got cut off there. Not supposed to record, but yeah, just wrapped up a session here at Lucky Chances, and I'll do a few hand recaps in a bit, but need to run to a dinner now. But all in all, the session went pretty well. All right, so it's Thursday, December 6th. We're over here at Seapot in San Mateo, California. It's a hot pot restaurant. I think it's like Taiwanese style. It's a few days removed from our session at Lucky Chances. I did have to run to a dinner that day, so craving a little bit of hot pot tonight, so we came over here. And while we're kind of just hanging out at the bar for a little bit, I figure why not recap a few hands while we're here. All right, so first interesting hand comes when the low jack makes it $25 to go, the high jack makes the call, the cutoff makes the call, the button makes the call, and we wake up with ace jack of clubs in the small blind here. Occasionally I like to put in a 3-bet in this spot, especially playing out of position, but given that our hand is suited and it plays decently multi-way, I go ahead and just take the conservative route and make the call. So we go 5 ways to a flop of ace of hearts, jack of hearts, 5 of diamonds. We're first to act, and I decided to check it. Given that there's 4 players behind, I expect some action to happen, but unfortunately it checks through on the flop. All right, so the turn brings a deuce of clubs, and we go ahead and check it again this time, again hoping to induce some sort of a bet from one of the later position players, and that's indeed what happens. The cutoff makes a bet of $60, the button calls, and then it gets back to us. We've got about $530 in our stack. And so we go ahead and just go for the raise here, start to kind of go for some value. And we raise it to $220, folds back to the cutoff. And he thinks it through for a little bit, and he goes ahead and just jams it all in. The button quickly folds, and given how strong our hand is, I'm just not sure that we can ever fold in this spot, having top 2 on this kind of a board. It feels like, based on the way he played the hand, the deuce definitely helped his hand. Maybe a hand like pocket deuces or something like that, but nevertheless, I don't think we can get away, and so we put our entire stack in there as well. We don't show our hands until the river, which comes a 5 of hearts, and I go ahead and plan to show my hand, but he quickly turns over 3-4 of diamonds. So he goes ahead and makes the wheel on the turn, leaving us behind, and we end up losing this hand. So one thing I will mention about this hand is that, generally speaking, I think when you're out of position, the standard line is to check pretty much all of your range. But with a hand as strong as ours, with ace jack here, I think it's okay to lead the flop a percentage of the time, because on occasion you might have a hand like king queen of hearts or king 10 of hearts or something along those lines where you would want to take the lead. And so in order to balance those kinds of bigger flush draws with a lot of equity, I think you should certainly be betting your value hands in those spots as well. I think I definitely misread the situation, assuming that because there were 4 players behind, someone would take a stab. But lesson learned in that, I think it's still okay to check most of your range in this spot, but just occasionally making sure that you mix in some bets with your value hands versus hands that are essentially bluffs or semi-bluffs. All right, so this next hand starts off, we've got about, I think, 120 big blinds, so about $600 in front of us. We're under the gun +1 with ace-king offsuit, and we go ahead and make it a standard $20 to go. The cutoff makes the call, and then it gets to the button, who makes a fairly large 3-bet to $120. He's got about, I think, $525 to start the hand, so he puts in a good 20%, slightly over of his whole stack size there. And this particular player is pretty tight if you want to go off, standard player profiles. So there's a decent percent of the time where I go ahead and just fold our hand, but just because it feels like he can have kings and aces here quite a bit, even though we could block those hands. But in trying to approach it kind of with a more like, GTO type strategy, as well as the fact that I do have a little bit of a leak in my game in that it's very hard for me to fold ace-king pre-flop, especially when we're only 100 big blinds deep. So what I go ahead and do is kind of conclude that occasionally he could be having jacks or queens here as well, and if he does have those hands, I want to put max pressure on him because we do block aces and kings and can potentially rep those hands ourselves. So we go to just jam it all in because I hate folding ace-king, like I said. And it gets back to the button and he quickly makes the call. And the board, I think, runs out jack 5-4, jack queen, and he indeed turns over pocket aces. So I think our instincts were correct on this one, but we tried to approach it with kind of like a more balanced playing style and not make exploitative folds all the time. But that's where it kind of hurt us this one time. That being said, I don't hate our play completely, but it wasn't the results, obviously, that we wanted. All right, next interesting hand is the under the gun player makes it 20 to go. Under the gun +1 calls, and it folds to us in the cutoff, and we've got pocket kings. We go ahead and put in a 3-bet to $80. We start the hand with about 600 in our stack, and it gets to the small blind, who actually makes the cold call. Our stacks are about even here, and both the early position players fold. So we go heads up to a flop of jack 3 deuce rainbow. He goes ahead and checks it. Given that the board is fairly dry, and I'm not too afraid of what turns might come, I go ahead and check it as well, just for deception. And the turn brings a 3, now bringing in I think, a backdoor club draw. And this time he actually leads for $100. So we got a little bit of an interesting spot here. We could definitely go for the raise, but I think if we do that, it still looks fairly strong. And so again, aiming for a little bit of deception, we go ahead and just make the call. All right, so the river comes a 4 of spades, and the player again leads for $200. A bit of an interesting spot because we've under-repped our hand throughout, and the most plausible hands he could be repping here are pocket queens, potentially pocket jacks, which has us beat. I can't see him betting 9s or 10s here too often, especially for value, given that we did call. So I guess on occasion we can call with a hand like ace-king of clubs or ace-queen of clubs that would turn to flush draw. Even then, I'm just not sure that he'd be betting in those spots with 9s or 10s here. So I kind of conclude that he only has really one value hand, which is queens, which we beat, and then another value hand which we don't beat, which is jacks. And while it's more likely for him to have queens and occasionally 9s and 10s and maybe just a pure bluff, because of as much as we were trying to go for deception, we ended up kind of confusing ourselves about what to do here when he leads the river. So rather than kind of put it all in, we take the conservative line of just calling, and he indeed chose ace-queen offsuit. So he was bluffing on the turn and river with really no equity other than trying to hit an ace potentially. And we go ahead and scoop that pot, even though we did not play it in the best way. Not because we didn't maximize value, but simply because we kind of just confused ourselves in terms of where we were at in the hand. So I definitely think something to be learned there when you take that kind of, I guess, non-traditional line with a hand like pocket kings on this kind of board. All right, so we started out the session off by being stuck around $1,200. Not a great start, but at this point in the game, we were able to kind of build a little bit back. I think we're only stuck 600 at this point. All right, so last interesting hand to share. The under the gun player makes it $20 to go. The low jack makes the call. He's pretty deep. He's got about, I want to say, 2,500 in a stack. And we've gotten pretty deep ourselves. We got about 1,500 in our stack. And so we're in the hijack with ace-3 of spades. We make the call as well, and the small blind calls. So we go 4 ways to a flop of 9-8-4 all spades. So obviously we flop gin here. It checks over to the low jack, who is a very wide range creative type player that's pretty aggressive. And so he goes ahead and leads for $45. We want to build a pot here, and we would occasionally raise with just a naked ace of spades here. So we go ahead and put in a raise to $125. It folds back to this player now, and he actually puts in another raise. He raises it to $330. So we're feeling pretty good, obviously, about this raise, seeing that we have the nuts. But given that we have position on this player, I don't think there's any need to further bloat the pot from here. And so we just make the call. All right, so the turn brings a 4 of clubs, which pairs the board. Not ideal because now hands like pocket 9s and pocket 8s beats us, as well as pocket 4s. And he's first to act, and he goes right out and just bets $600. Given the player type, as I mentioned, he's pretty wide range. He plays very aggressive, and he's very creative overall, and he likes to get a lot of chips in the middle pretty often. And he's a super nice guy. I play with him a bunch. Given that his range is pretty wide, and I feel like even though occasionally he can have 9s or 8s, the reason we called on the flop was to essentially set up either a turn or a river shove. And so that's what we go ahead and do. We just shove it in for $1,200. He begrudgingly makes a little bit of a noise and calls and asks if we have a full house, which is a great sign. Definitely sounds like he has a flush. And so as soon as he says that, I turn over our ace-3 of spades, and I can see him flash the king of spades. So a bit of a cooler. And the river comes an inconsequential 7 of spades. And we go ahead and scoop a pretty massive pot. I think it's the biggest pot we've won on this vlog. It was around, I think, $3,100. So, all right, so we played a total of 3 hours at Lucky Chances. We started off, like I said, pretty bad. We were stuck 1,200 right off the bat. And we found a way to build back, though. And we were in the game for a total of $1,800. And we cashed out for $3,107. So we profit $1,307. And so we hit our trifecta. I think in total we played about 10 hours, maybe just a shade over 10 hours. And we profited over $3,500. So feeling pretty good. I think whenever you play poker, it's great when you have these types of positive upswing results. But it's definitely important to remember that it's more about the process and controlling what you can control, things like volume, playing when you feel like it, things like that. And so although it's nice to have a kind of nice string of wins here, I think anytime you kind of have an upswing or a downswing, it's important to remember to kind of stay the course, focus on the things that you can control, and results will happen when they happen. I do want to also take a quick moment to give a shout out to Tom. Tom was on a table, one of the earlier tables that I played on. I think it was like table 19. And he was really nice about giving me a compliment about this particular vlog project. So thank you, Tom, for sharing your kind feedback. I think we got into a couple of small hands where I think I might have 3-bet you a couple of times. Do know that I did have it every single time. So good fold. And yeah, as far as going forward for the rest of December, I think we're going to just mostly grind cash. There aren't too many tournaments, particularly in the area around this time of year. And so we're going to try to grind it up in cash. The plan is to try to get a couple more vlogs in before the end of the year. And so that's what we're going to try to do. And I'll see you all on the next one.